Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris. Today, I'm joined by Zach, who is currently a graduate student in an MBA program and is preparing to enter the financial services industry. In fact, he's already secured an employment option based on an internship that he previously completed. So, Zach, I want to take time to thank you. Appreciate you for joining today to talk about your relatively, we'll say, infant career journey to this point.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah. So again, while you are still kind of carving what this path will be moving forward, you have been able to secure an employment option once you complete your graduate degree. So my first question is, how did you get to that point? What were some steps you took along the way to be able to not only secure an internship, but allow that to lead into a full-time job opportunity post-grad?
Uh, yeah, so I started looking for internships around my junior year. I originally was looking for internships, like you said, in the financial services field. I had one lined up with PNC up in Pittsburgh. That unfortunately fell through at the last minute. That was a crazy whirlwind of emotions, that phone call, because I had the internship sorted and everything, and they accepted me already. And then the campus recruiter phoned me just to confirm like a final detail. And as I could hear him scrolling on his computer down my application. He noticed that I was obviously an international student, and he was he was like, "Oh wow, we don't sponsor international students." And literally on the same phone call that he was, just confirming the final details, that internship was kind of stripped away from me. So I started looking in my junior year. I ended up looking a bit late in the year. I should have probably taken Professor Blackwell's advice a bit more seriously. Uh, uh, Rest in peace, Professor Blackwell. He was a great advisor to me. But I should have taken his advice a bit more seriously and started looking earlier in the year, because when I was looking, I think all of them had kind of been taken up already. So doing an internship was kind of off the books for me. So I was looking at full-time employment straight away after college. So I applied to jobs all around in the Pittsburgh area, and I was lucky enough to be offered a job with Ernst and Young (EY), the accounting firm up there. And I secured that job after graduation for my undergrad. But then I played college soccer here at West Lib, and my coach wanted me to come back for my COVID year,
Yeah.
that fifth year that all the athletes got. So I wanted to come back and do that. Obviously, get the chance to earn my masters as well. So I spoke to the company, spoke to the recruiter, and spoke to the partner that had recruited me, and said, "Is there any way we can sort of, make this happen, mold this into an internship, and then delay the start date until after my post grad?" And they were really willing to work with me, which was I didn't expect, to be honest. But it was really nice to see that commitment to their employees. So I did the internship after I graduated my undergrad in the summer, last summer, then came back this year for my masters. And then I'm starting in January up in Pittsburgh.
All right. First, congratulations. That's a great opportunity, and one that I will say many probably would not have been able to navigate well. So for you, what helped inform you to even ask some of those questions, right? Some people would just say, "Hey, I can't accept this employment opportunity," and they may just leave it at that. So for you, what was that mindset, or what were there maybe some people that were advising you or mentoring you to ask those types of questions?
Yeah, a lot of my friends were calling me stupid for even considering coming back to school. They said it's such a great opportunity, you should just go straight into it, out of undergrad. But I knew, like personally, that I wanted to continue and play my last year of soccer. I knew that I would have kicked myself if I didn't do it. And then just being honest, my dad worked in business for a long time, and he just said be honest with them. So he really pushed me to get on a call with them. I set up a call with my recruiter at the company, and I was just like, "Hey, like I'm just being completely honest here. This is my situation. I don't want to throw this opportunity away, but I also don't want to throw that opportunity away. Can we come to some sort of makeshift agreement, some workaround?" And I think they really appreciated that honesty. And yeah, they were able to figure something out. So just the honesty, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good, right? Especially in any type of job search, internship process, being upfront and honest about limitations, challenges, whatever that may be, goes a long way. Even if it does not translate into a role, at least you have remained true to your integrity, and they understand that if something comes up later, you're at least going to be honest with them. Right. So I think
Yeah.
it speaks volumes for you and also for EY and accepting that and creating a path forward for you. So for you, you received, offers from some high profile companies, right? Corporate offices in Pittsburgh with PNC, and now what you're translating into a job opportunity with EY. What do you think helped you stand out in those application processes? And was there any one or multiple, we'll say, strategies that you used in order to get through those application processes and in those interview processes?
I think what made me stand out was my CV, definitely the things on my CV. I worked with housing and residence life for about 4 years now. I became an RA in my sophomore year, and then I continued that for 2 years. And then I became a hall director, and I was in charge of two residence halls on campus for a year and a half. And then now in my master's, I'm a graduate assistant for the housing office. I'm helping me get through grad school, and I think those things really stood out. Being in a leadership position from so early on. When I was a hall director, I had 8 RAs underneath me while still being an undergrad. So I think those leadership positions definitely made me stand out from other applicants as well. I think also maybe a bit my previous job experience. I took 2 gap years before I came to college, so I was a bit more of a non-traditional student. I was a bit more mature, I was a bit older. So I think those work experiences definitely helped me stand out. I worked at a solicitor's firm back in England, basically a lawyer's firm,
Yeah.
for a year before I came to college. So definitely those helped me stand out. Yeah.
All right, good. And you didn't allude to, you straight up discussed, right, that with PNC, the challenge and the reason they ultimately rescinded that offer was because they did not sponsor international students in those roles. They didn't sponsor a visa, which adds another layer of challenges and difficulties for you and for others. In going through these processes, what types of challenges did you experience and how did you work through those in a way that helped you secure this opportunity with EY? And is there any specific advice that you would offer to other students in that type of situation?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more difficult as an international student to try and gain employment and stay in the US after college because a lot of companies don't sponsor individuals. I understand the reason why. You have to be put forward for the H-1B work visa for the lottery for your sponsorship. So I understand if a company, they would rather give that internship to a US resident who is then guaranteed to be able to work for them after the fact, whereas the international student might not be successful in their H-1B application. So I do understand the reasons behind it, but sort of navigating around that it really started very early on, my freshman sophomore year. Um, I looked into the industries that sponsor a lot more, and that was accounting and computer science, I think. So and I knew that I didn't want to do CIS. I was always a numbers guy. So accounting was kind of what I was going into anyway. So I was kind of lucky with that. And then just on top of that, just making sure that, my grades were good as well. My GPA was up there, giving myself the best possible chance to compete in those competitive positions like the internships and the jobs. And like you said, like when that opportunity with PNC was kind of stripped away from me on what was supposed to be a very fun and joyous phone call,
Right.
that was hard, but I just had to sort of remind myself that I am worth that attention, that I didn't get into that position for no reason. Like I ended up in that position for a reason, and that I knew that one door closing means another was going to open. So I just trying to stay positive and, you know, just staying positive and doing the research. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. Now, for you, ultimately an accounting major, was that something that you decided after some research, or is that something you came in wanting to pursue and then you did the research about how you could best pursue these opportunities after that decision had been made?
That was after after the research had been done. I came in my freshman year as a criminal justice major, because I originally wanted to go do criminal justice in undergrad, do pre-law, and then go to law school. And then I kind of, realized that that might not give me the best chances of success um, after college. So accounting, like I said, I always enjoyed math, always enjoyed numbers. I made that decision to switch over. And then in my sophomore year, I think I added finance as a double major because they tie very closely together. It's pretty much the same industry. And I knew that it would give me a better chance to stand out and, like I said, be competitive in those application processes. So that was definitely a decision that I made after having done that research. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's wake up call to anybody, right? If we have anybody listening right now that's early on in their academic career and they're still trying to figure out what life is and what those next steps could be, right? Use some of that research. Consider, right, what job and industry areas will be growing, as well as what best align with you. And for you, you looked even a step further, which was, okay, I understand some of the challenges I will be experiencing if I want to work in the United States as a student from abroad. All right, here are the companies and these are the fields they're in that are most likely to be receptive to sponsoring, that H1B visa. So kudos to you, because that is, again, an extra layer of thought and critical thought to these decisions that may not um, come to, or at least come to the thoughts of the typical 18 to 20-year-old. But again, as you said, you came in, right, a little bit more mature, having been in the workforce. So, right, the way you were thinking through that may be different than the typical 18 to 20-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So that's good. So as you've gone through your coursework and now you're in an MBA program, um, we talk about, in the education, higher education, right? And these are the skills that you need to learn. This is the knowledge you need to obtain. For you, were there any moments throughout your collegiate career, whether undergraduate or graduate, where things just started to click more and you're like, you know what? This all does come together and I understand that I'm acquiring the knowledge and I'm acquiring the skills that will serve me for the future.
That was definitely during the internship that I did last summer. Um, the classroom is very, very theoretical. Obviously, you learn all the theory, you learn from the books, you do the homework problems, and you obviously pass the classes, hopefully,
Yeah.
and you are getting the stuff right. But when it actually translated to the real world, and I was involved in the audit of a publicly traded company during my internship, and I was able to just really easily go in and view the financial statements and understand where things connected and where these numbers came from and understand why things were balancing and stuff like that. That's really when everything like clicked. Um, Seeing it translated into like the real world environment and knowing that what you're doing in the classroom is applicable to the real world. I think a lot of people, especially when they come out of high school, they think to themselves, "Well, I'm never going to use that in real life." Like, you know what I mean? Like when you sit in your math class and you learn geometry and Pythagoras and stuff like that, and you think to yourself, "You're never gonna use that in real life." I think it's knowing that knowing that I'm actually going to use everything that I've learned in my collegiate career. That was like a really enlightening moment. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And I think it speaks to the value of experiential learning, right? Whether it's an internship, a short-term project, right, that you're supporting a company or a person, right? That is where it all clicked, and that's not uncommon, right? I hear that a lot of, that theory, that knowledge, that information base. Once I put that into practice, is when you start to realize, oh, that's why this professor harped on this information, because it actually does provide value when I get into the workforce beyond, right, the application of the knowledge base and that theory. Were there any other types of like office type skills or skills that you acquired through your internship that you think will serve you as you begin your career here in the next 6-ish months?
Yeah. Definitely Microsoft Excel.
Okay.
I think that's very common with people in the financial industries and especially accounting. But being able to like navigate around a workbook, around a spreadsheet is such a time saver. Knowing all the shortcuts, knowing how to do certain things. During the internship, put everyone on a crash course of Microsoft Excel, and they got everyone up to date on the skills that they needed. And that was not like a big wake up call, but it was very eye-opening to see the full-time employees there
Yeah.
and how quickly they were able to do things and the amount of time it would take me to do it compared to people that had been there, even the first year full-time professionals that had only been there, like 8 months. They would be so much more effective in the way they would do things, so much more time efficient. So the number one is definitely Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, and that I mean, that applies to anybody, not any I'm not gonna say everybody, but to many people in all sorts of industry areas and fields because the ability to take numbers, manipulate them, and put out some impactful even if it's a quick chart or visual, that can apply to anything, right? Just if you're
Yeah,
putting a proposal together, "Hey, here's what's been happening over the past 5 years, budget information." The ability to do that effectively and efficiently, I think, can serve most everybody in their professions.
yeah. I started to use it even just in my daily life. My weekly schedule is in Excel, so I can have a visual of it. Um, when I'm helping, I put a lot of my soccer stuff into Excel as well to do with like the West Lib men's soccer team here. That helped me out massively. So it definitely translates not just into like the business sense, but into like all facets of life. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, you talked about a little things. Is there anything else that you would say from college, whether it's inside or outside the classroom, that you think did not prepare you appropriately for that internship and any other work experience you've had? Right. Here's a gap that I know I realized existed once I was working more in a full-time type role that you had to kind of address and shorten that gap, or at least, you had a learning curve, whether that's something like communication, critical thinking in the workplace, right? Anything, teamwork, right? I mean, I know that you have that soccer experience, so teamwork is probably something that comes a little bit more naturally. But any of those soft skills that you had a little bit of learning to do,
Personally, I don't think I had an issue with any of those like sort of soft skills. I did witness like other people coming straight out of college who are a bit younger than me, like I said, because I was a bit more of a mature student. That is something that I did notice with my peers that they've sometimes maybe struggled to adapt to. Uh, Not so much in the communication, but just in the how efficient you are in communicating. Because ultimately when you end up in a job like this, time is money. So people aren't trying. There's a time and a place for chit chat and stuff like that, but it's really work focused, especially in accounting. I'm not looking forward to starting in January and working long hours. But yeah, like time is money. Just the speed at which people can communicate things and how clear and concise and quickly you can convey that information was definitely something that I noticed across my peers. Yeah.
yeah. I want to go back real quick to your application materials, your resume, cover letter, anything that you had to submit. Aside from the experiences that you had, how do you think you were able to articulate those well? Right? Because I think that's important. You can have the best experiences, opportunities, leadership, roles, any and all of that. But what do you think helped you stand out in how you communicated that? Are there things that you focused on that you kind of took away, or ways that you tailored the way that you conveyed those experiences that you think helped elevate your status?
Yeah, I mean, definitely being clear and concise, just like I said, with your information verbally, but also like on the CVs and the resumes. I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school. I left that off my CV. I left that off my resume. Employers are probably not looking at that sort of stuff. They're looking for more relevant, more recent experiences than that. So leaving stuff like that off of there, making sure that all of my stuff was, up to date, really focusing on those leadership positions. Like I said in the housing office, emphasizing that, I was a captain on the men's soccer team as well, really trying to emphasize those leadership points. I'd say that's I think I mentioned it earlier, but that was probably the biggest thing on my resume and my CV that tried to help me stand out, yeah.
Yeah. And now I'll ask, because it's a current topic and everybody's figuring out how to use these tools appropriately, responsibly, ethically within their day to day. And this will lead into a follow-up question as well. But did you use any AI tools when crafting your resume or considering how you could highlight those responsibilities in the best way?
I didn't use AI. What I did use was I used a website to build my resume just for like a simple design. It had like a bold, like colored in heading at the top with all of my contact info, my name, a little introduction in there. I left that gray just to keep it professional. You don't want any bright colors or anything like that. Recruiters will probably just throw that in the bin straight away if
Mhm.
it was hot pink or something. But yeah, just to get like a nice professional design on there. Um, I used a website. I didn't use any AI, but I regularly tried to, print it off in a couple different designs, different styles, different wordings, different orders, and I would regularly just compare them, and I would hand them out to people and I would say, which do you think is better? Which catches your eye the most? As a neutral, which do you think conveys that good information about me the best? So just trying to get that neutral opinion really helped. So I guess the real AI in that situation was just my friends and professors and trying to get that neutral opinion.
Yeah, and that's important, right? Because you have an opinion, and as do many others, and you can never be sure the types of opinions that are shared or that a person has when they're looking at those materials. So you have to do your best to please the widest range of audience and their interests at the same time, which is it's a difficult task because you could have something that is 100% stamped by one recruiter and another recruiter thinks it's the worst thing they've seen in the past 10 weeks. So yeah, finding that neutral opinion is definitely helpful and impactful. So with AI, right, you're going to be entering financial services industry, and you've had some experience, obviously there. What are some ways that you either observed or that you expect AI to transform that industry over, we'll say, the next 2 to 5 years, or even beyond, if you can think that far ahead?
Yeah, so I actually experienced firsthand during my internship the developments of AI and how they're investing in it. They announced during my internship that they've invested over $1 billion EY into AI, and one of the tools that I was using was a financial statement, like basically like a processor.
Mm,
You can enter in all of the information. It will double check that against earnings reports and stuff like that, different other documentation to make sure that everything matches and all the numbers are correct. And it was still in its beta phase during my internship, and I was actually the first person on the team that I was on to get to test it out. They
mm,
kind of gave it to the intern. They said, play around with that, see what you can figure out. But that was a lot of fun, and it was very fun to see the developments that AI is taking on. $1 billion, that's a lot of money. They have their own kind of chat GPT for the company. So you can like ask it questions and then it will help you. It could be about anything. It could be like a tax law. So I don't personally like work in tax, I work in audit. But if something came across my desk and I wasn't completely sure, I could ask the company's version of ChatGPT a question about a tax law, and it would find that information for me. Um, it's a bit more reliable than the publicly available one, due to that investment that they've put into it. But I think it runs on OpenAI, so it's been pretty cool to see the investment that they've put in there. And I think in the future it will only continue to grow. I hope that it doesn't completely end up automated, because then all accountants will be out of a job.
right.
But I do think you need those human eyes just to completely check everything over. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years with AI for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, $1 billion investment definitely reflects EY's opinions of how it will be used, is used, and will be used in the workforce because they're seeing that as a, 10 plus 50-year plus investment, not just a, hey, this is part of our 5 year strategic plan.
Yeah, yeah, $1 billion goes far beyond a 5 year
Right.
strategic plan.
So that'll be fun. So to this point, right, in your, we'll say, career, which is a budding career and about to become a full-time career, what is either the best career advice you've ever received or the best advice you received to this point and leading up to the start of your career? Or what was maybe a piece of advice that you wish you could unhear because it has not helped you in any way?
I'll start with the negative. During that year that I worked at a solicitor's firm back home in England, I was told that the key to climbing the ladder was knowing how to make a good cup of tea, because I was, right at the bottom of the rung, on the bottom rung, and I would be the one making cups of tea for all the clients coming in for meetings and stuff. And I just knew that that wasn't how the real world worked.
Mm,
That if you work for a bigger company, that those are not the responsibilities that they give you. That's really not how it works in the bigger picture. So that's probably the worst piece of advice that I'd ever heard, and I wish I could unhear that. But the best piece of advice, it's not necessarily career advice. It's actually one of my high school best friends said it to me when I was about 17. He said, nobody cares as much as you do. And it's for some reason it's always stuck with me. If you make a mistake or you slip up, you know, you care the most because it's personal to you. And even on the flip side of that, if you do something amazing, if you do something great, nobody also cares like as much as you do about that because you've put in that work to get that good result. So it's realizing that on the negative side of things that things aren't as bad as they seem. You're allowed to make mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes in my internship, but it's about being open-minded and trying to learn from those mistakes and realizing that it's not the end of the world. So I think that's like a big thing for people coming out of college into the workforce, realizing that you're not going to know everything straight away and you're going to make mistakes. It's okay because nobody cares as much as you do. So yeah, it's probably the best advice I ever heard, and that was from a 17-year-old.
Right. And I mean, that says a lot about one, you as a person, right? Nobody's going to care as much as you do. And obviously you had kind of espoused that in your day-to-day living, that you cared about, whether that was people, whether that was the job at hand, or whether that was growing and developing yourself as a person, right? That speaks a lot about you as a person, but also, right, that somebody recognized that and realized that it was unique, right? And not a whole lot of other people possess that. So
Yeah.
that's good. That's good feedback to get. So, do you have any final words of wisdom for those, again, either entering the workforce, those that are in the workforce and trying to figure out their next steps, or maybe even specifically, you have advice for students in the U.S. from abroad that are trying to carve their way right into those career options?
Yeah, I would say for those international students in the US, I would say do your research, find out which industries tend to sponsor more. I'm sure that it's an ever-changing landscape. I'm sure it will be different in 5 years as different industries pop up and become more lucrative, etc. So definitely do your research. Do your research about how you're able to do your internships as well. Do your research about OPT, CPT, and the steps that you need to go through in order to be eligible to do those internships. And then just for the general college students, pay attention in class because as I mentioned before, the things that you learn in there, they do directly translate to the real world once you get into that internship or that full-time job. It is valuable stuff, so don't play chess on your laptop, which I probably did a little bit too much. Pay attention in class. If you're going after the jobs in the industry that I'm going into, it's very competitive. I won't lie. So, trying to ensure that you're as close to that 4.0 as possible. Getting involved in extracurricular stuff, whether that's a sport, developing those teamwork skills. I was part of the West Banco Financial, the investment club on campus. Really, just getting involved in anything that's going to bolster your CV and make you stand out from other people. And that's a long-term commitment that you have to make. You can't do that for one out of your 4 years in college. That has to be all 4 years in college. You don't really get to pick and choose when you are gonna develop yourself professionally. That needs to be a long-term commitment because that will last after college as well. And like you said, I'm not there yet, but I know that if you stop professionally developing yourself, then you're only gonna run into problems. So I think continuous growth is a very important thing.
Right. And that's great advice, right? Focusing on your career and self development is not I'm in college or as I start my career. It is a continuous goal, continuous learning that will only positively benefit your career and you personally, right? And maybe help you grow
Yeah,
outside of your work into whether those are personal initiatives or whether those are outside professional options. So, yes, and anybody that's listening right now that has me in class or will have me in class, I want that attention in class and get the most from your education as possible to most definitely resonate. Well, Zach, I want to thank you. Appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts. Definitely have a lot of application to students in the college setting and those students that are exploring. Maybe they haven't figured that out and they've just graduated. So I think you provide a lot of valuable insight and advice. So I want to thank you again.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah. And for everyone out there, make sure that you tune in to the next episode of From Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris.